The news of Sarah's true identity spread through Fort Benning like wildfire. By morning, everyone from the mess hall staff to the base medical personnel knew that the quiet recruit who had endured weeks of harassment was actually an elite Delta Force operator. The revelation created shockwaves that extended far beyond the immediate training unit. In the recruit barracks, conversations buzzed with disbelief and newfound respect. Johnson, the former football player who had mocked Sarah's size, sat on his bunk staring at the floor. Delta Force, he muttered repeatedly. She's actually Delta Force, and we've been treating her like garbage. Martinez, who had accused Sarah of lying about her background, felt sick with embarrassment. I told her she was making everyone look bad. A Delta Force operator, and I told her she was showing off. The other recruits were equally stunned. They replayed every interaction with Sarah, remembering her calm responses to their taunts and her patient endurance of extra duties. What they had interpreted as weakness was actually the discipline and professionalism of someone who operated at the highest levels of military service. Davidson, the former construction worker, approached Sarah as she packed her gear. "Ma'am, I owe you an apology. We all do. We said some terrible things, and you never responded with anything but respect." Sarah paused in her packing and looked at the group of recruits who had gathered around her bunk. "You don't need to apologize. You were following the lead of your instructors and responding to what you thought was the situation. That's actually part of what I was here to observe. How did you stay so calm?" Johnson asked. "If someone talked to me the way we talked to you, I would have lost it. Part of special operations training is learning to control your emotional responses," Sarah explained. "You can't complete difficult missions if you let personal feelings interfere with professional responsibilities. What happened here was just another type of mission." Her words carried weight that the recruits were only beginning to understand. They had been witnessing genuine military professionalism without recognizing it. Sarah's behavior had demonstrated the standards they were supposed to be learning, but the instructors had been too blinded by prejudice to see it. Word of the situation reached other units on base, and reactions varied widely. Some instructors defended the drill sergeants, arguing that they couldn't be expected to identify undercover operators. Others pointed out that good instructors should recognize exceptional talent regardless of its source. Captain Morrison, who oversaw advanced combat training, had a different perspective. "The problem isn't that they didn't know she was Delta Force. The problem is that they saw exceptional performance and chose to ignore it because it didn't fit their preconceptions. That's the real issue here." In the drill sergeant's office, the atmosphere was grim. Thompson and Williams faced potential disciplinary action that could end their careers. They had violated fundamental military principles by allowing personal bias to affect their professional duties. "How could we have known?" Williams asked for the 100th time. "Her paperwork said civilian recruit with no prior experience." "That's not the point," replied Master Sergeant Rodriguez, who was conducting the preliminary investigation. "You had a recruit performing at expert levels in every category, and instead of recognizing excellence, you chose to harass her. Whether she was Delta Force or just naturally gifted, your response was inappropriate." The investigation was revealing deeper problems with the training program. Sarah's documentation showed patterns of bias that extended beyond her individual case. Female recruits consistently received harsher treatment than males with similar performance levels. Smaller recruits faced additional harassment regardless of their capabilities. Colonel Harrison was preparing for difficult conversations with Pentagon officials who would want explanations for how their elite operator had been treated. The incident was becoming a case study in everything wrong with military culture and institutional prejudice. Sarah's final report was comprehensive and damning. She had documented dozens of incidents where instructor bias had affected training quality. Her recommendations included mandatory bias training for all instructors, revised evaluation criteria that focused on performance rather than appearance, and regular undercover assessments to ensure standards were being maintained. The current system rewards conformity to physical stereotypes rather than actual military capability, her report stated. Exceptional performers are being overlooked or discouraged because they don't match instructor expectations about what soldiers should look like. The most significant revelation came when Sarah provided video evidence of her treatment. She had been wearing concealed recording equipment throughout her assignment. capturing every insult, every unfair punishment, and every moment when her obvious competence had been dismissed or ignored. The recordings were devastating. They showed drill sergeants making personal attacks unrelated to military training, assigning punishments based on prejudice rather than performance, and consistently failing to recognize exceptional capability when it was demonstrated repeatedly. Pentagon officials who reviewed the material were appalled. General McKenzie, who oversaw special operations training programs, called it a complete failure of military leadership at multiple levels. The repercussions extended far beyond Fort Benning. Similar undercover assessments were immediately ordered at training facilities throughout the military system. The Defense Department announced comprehensive reviews of instructor selection and training programs designed to eliminate bias and improve recognition of military talent. For the drill sergeants involved, consequences were swift and severe. Thompson and Williams were relieved of instructor duties pending full investigation. Their military careers were effectively over, with early retirement their best possible outcome. Master Sergeant Rodriguez received a formal reprimand, but was allowed to continue in a modified role under close supervision. The impact on recruit training was immediate and positive. New protocols required instructors to evaluate performance objectively without regard to personal appearance or background assumptions. Regular assessments by outside observers became standard practice to ensure compliance with updated standards. Sarah returned to her regular duties with Delta Force, but her influence on military training would continue for years. Her report became required reading at military leadership schools, and her experience was used as a case study in professional military education programs worldwide. The recruits who had trained alongside her were profoundly affected by the revelation of her true identity. Many reported that the experience changed their understanding of leadership, professionalism, and the danger of judging others based on appearance rather than capability. Johnson, the former football player, later said in an interview, "She taught me more about being a soldier in 2 weeks than I learned in the rest of basic training combined. Not through lectures or punishment, but just by showing what real military bearing looked like." Martinez added, "I realized that everything I thought I knew about military strength was wrong. She was stronger than all of us, and it had nothing to do with physical size. It was mental toughness and professional discipline that made the difference." The story of Sarah's undercover assignment became legendary within military circles. It was used to train new instructors about the importance of recognizing talent regardless of packaging and the professional duty to develop all soldiers to their maximum potential. Years later, Fort Benning was recognized as having one of the most effective and unbiased training programs in the military system. The changes implemented as a result of Sarah's report had created an environment where exceptional performers were identified and nurtured regardless of their background or physical appearance. Sarah continued her service with Delta Force, participating in classified missions that remained unknown to the public. But her most significant contribution to military effectiveness might have been her willingness to endure weeks of harassment and mockery in service of improving how the military identified and developed its future leaders. The drill sergeants who had mocked her learned a painful lesson about the danger of assumptions and the importance of recognizing excellence in all its forms. Their careers ended in disgrace, but the changes their behavior prompted would benefit countless future soldiers who might otherwise have been overlooked or discouraged. The recruits who witnessed Sarah's professionalism under pressure carried those lessons throughout their military careers. They became leaders who valued performance over appearance and who understood that strength comes in many forms. The true measure of Sarah's success wasn't in the punishments delivered to those who had mistreated her, but in the systematic changes that ensured future soldiers would be evaluated fairly based on their capabilities rather than their conformity to outdated stereotypes. Her assignment had proven that excellence could be found in unexpected packages, that professional bearing was more important than physical presence, and that the military's most dangerous enemy might not be foreign adversaries, but its own internal biases and assumptions. The story of the Delta Force operator who was mocked by her own instructors became a powerful reminder that in military service, as in life, it's dangerous to judge a book by its cover. True strength and capability often come in forms that defy expectations, and the wise leader learns to recognize and develop talent wherever it appears. Sarah's legacy lived on in every training program that valued merit over appearance, every instructor who looked beyond stereotypes to see potential, and every recruit who learned that military excellence comes in many forms. Her willingness to endure humiliation for the greater good had created lasting change that would benefit the military for generations to come. The second week of training brought more intensive combat exercises. The drill sergeants had designed scenarios specifically to push recruits beyond their breaking points. Mock battles with live ammunition fired overhead, extended periods without sleep, and constant psychological pressure were all designed to identify who had the mental toughness for advanced military service. Sarah continued to excel in ways that defied explanation. During a 72-hour field exercise with minimal food and water, she maintained peak performance while other recruits collapsed from exhaustion. Her energy levels seemed infinite, and her decision-making remained sharp even after days without proper rest. Drill Sergeant Williams was becoming increasingly frustrated with Sarah's consistent excellence. He had seen thousands of recruits pass through training, and her skill level was unprecedented for someone entering basic military service. During a particularly difficult urban warfare simulation, Sarah demonstrated rune-clearing techniques that were taught only in specialized schools to elite units. "Where did you learn to move like that, Martinez?" Williams demanded after the exercise. "YouTube videos, Drill Sergeant," Sarah replied with a straight face. The lie was obvious, but Sarah maintained military bearing while delivering it. Williams knew she was hiding something significant, but without direct orders to investigate, he could only continue the harassment that was becoming increasingly ineffective. The breaking point came during an advanced marksmanship exercise designed to test recruits under extreme stress. The course required participants to engage multiple targets at various distances while carrying heavy equipment and operating under time pressure. Most recruits struggled to hit stationary targets at close range. Sarah approached the course with calm confidence. She engaged targets at distances up to 800 meters with precision that stunned the instructors. Her shooting was so accurate that they stopped the exercise to check her rifle for modifications. When they found only standard military equipment, they assumed the weapon was somehow defective and gave her a different rifle. Her performance with the second weapon was identical. Every shot found its mark with mechanical precision. She moved between positions with tactical expertise that belonged in special operations units, not basic training. Her time through the course broke existing records by significant margins. Master Sergeant Rodriguez, the chief marksmanship instructor, pulled the drill sergeants aside after the exercise. "I've been teaching shooting for 20 years, and I've never seen anything like that. She's shooting at expert sniper levels. Where did this recruit come from?" The drill sergeants had no answer. Sarah's paperwork showed she was a civilian with no prior military experience. Her background check revealed nothing unusual. Yet her performance suggested years of advanced training with the most elite military units. That evening, Drill Sergeant Thompson made a decision that would change everything. He contacted the base commander to request Sarah's complete personnel file. What he discovered in the classified sections would shake his understanding of military hierarchy and expose the extent of his mistake. Meanwhile, Sarah was facing new challenges from her fellow recruits. Her exceptional performance was creating resentment among those struggling with basic tasks. Some accused her of showing off, while others suspected she had lied about her background to gain unfair advantages. Recruit Martinez approached Sarah during evening cleanup duties. "Listen, whatever game you're playing, it's not fair to the rest of us. We're all trying to learn here, and you're making everyone look bad." "I'm not playing any game," Sarah replied quietly. "I'm just doing my best like everyone else." "Nobody is that good without training," Martinez insisted. "You're either lying about your background or you don't belong in basic training with the rest of us." The conversation was interrupted by an announcement over the base communication system. "Recruit Sarah Martinez report to the commander's office immediately." The unusual timing and formality of the order silenced the barracks. Recruits typically only visited the commander's office for serious disciplinary issues or medical emergencies. Sarah gathered her gear and reported as ordered. The walk across base felt longer than usual, and she wondered if her cover had finally been compromised. She had been prepared for this possibility since the beginning of her assignment, but the timing was earlier than expected. Base Commander Colonel Harrison was waiting in his office along with Drill Sergeant Thompson and Master Sergeant Rodriguez. The atmosphere was tense, and Sarah could see questions in their eyes that demanded honest answers. "Recruit Martinez," Colonel Harrison began, "we've been reviewing your performance records, and several inconsistencies have come to our attention. Your skill levels are significantly beyond what we would expect from someone with your stated background." Sarah maintained military bearing while considering her response. Her orders had been specific about maintaining cover unless directly challenged by superior officers who demonstrated knowledge of her true status. "I've been working hard to meet military standards, sir," she replied carefully. Colonel Harrison opened a classified folder and spread several documents across his desk. Sarah could see portions of her actual service record, including commendations and mission reports that painted a very different picture than her training file. "According to these documents, you're not actually a new recruit. Would you care to explain the discrepancy?" The moment of truth had arrived. Sarah's assignment was being compromised, but she could no longer maintain her cover in the face of direct questioning from her commanding officer. "Sir, I'm operating under classified orders that prevent me from discussing my background without proper authorization." The answer confirmed what Colonel Harrison had suspected after reviewing her complete file. He turned to the drill sergeants with an expression that mixed anger with embarrassment. "Gentlemen, I need to inform you that Recruit Martinez is actually Staff Sergeant Sarah Martinez, Delta Force operator, currently assigned to an evaluation mission for the Defense Department. She's been observing our training methods and instructor performance as part of a comprehensive review of military education programs." The silence that followed was deafening. Drill Sergeant Thompson's face drained of color as he realized the implications of how he had been treating one of the military's most elite soldiers. Master Sergeant Rodriguez looked stunned, finally understanding why Sarah's marksmanship had seemed impossibly advanced. "Sir," Thompson stammered, "we had no idea. Her paperwork showed civilian status with no prior service." "That was intentional," Colonel Harrison explained. "Staff Sergeant Martinez volunteered for an undercover assignment to assess whether our training programs adequately identify and develop exceptional talent. She was also evaluating instructor bias and whether personal prejudices affect training quality." Sarah maintained her position at attention while the officers processed this revelation. Her true rank meant that she outranked most of the instructors who had been harassing her. Her credentials included successful completion of some of the military's most demanding training programs and active service with units that most soldiers only heard about in classified briefings. "Delta Force?" Drill Sergeant Williams asked weakly. "She's actually Delta Force?" Colonel Harrison nodded. "Staff Sergeant Martinez has served with distinction in multiple combat deployments. She's qualified as a sniper, demolitions expert, and hand-to-hand combat instructor. Her record includes operations that remain classified at the highest levels." The magnitude of their mistake was becoming clear. The drill sergeants had been mocking and harassing someone whose military credentials far exceeded their own. They had treated an elite special operations soldier like a weak civilian who didn't belong in military service. "Her performance makes sense now," Master Sergeant Rodriguez said quietly. "I couldn't understand how someone could shoot that well without advanced training." Sarah was authorized to speak freely about her background now that her cover had been officially compromised. "I completed Delta Force selection 3 years ago. I've been serving with the unit ever since. This assignment was voluntary, designed to help improve training programs by providing insider perspective on instructor effectiveness." The implications went beyond personal embarrassment. The drill sergeant's behavior had been observed and documented by someone whose opinions would influence policy decisions affecting military education throughout the entire system. Their prejudices and assumptions had been exposed at the highest levels. Colonel Harrison continued the briefing. "Staff Sergeant Martinez has been taking detailed notes about instructor performance, training effectiveness, and institutional bias. Her observations will be included in a comprehensive report to the Pentagon about improvements needed in our military education programs." Drill Sergeant Thompson realized that his career might never recover from this incident. He had violated basic military principles by allowing personal bias to affect his treatment of a subordinate, except that subordinate had actually been a superior officer operating undercover. "What happens now, sir?" Thompson asked. "That depends on Staff Sergeant Martinez's final report," Colonel Harrison replied. "She's been documenting everything that's happened during her time here. The Defense Department will use her observations to determine what changes need to be made to prevent similar incidents in the future." Sarah finally spoke up. "Permission to address the situation, sir?" "Granted." The harassment and extra duties were documented as evidence of institutional bias based on physical appearance and gender assumptions. "However, I also observed positive aspects of the training program that should be preserved and expanded." Her professionalism was evident even while discussing the poor treatment she had received. Despite weeks of mockery and harassment, she was providing balanced feedback designed to improve the system rather than seeking personal revenge. The meeting concluded with orders for Sarah to complete a comprehensive evaluation report within 72 hours. She would then return to her regular duties with Delta Force, leaving behind a training program that would be forever changed by her observations. As word spread through the base about Sarah's true identity, the reaction among recruits and instructors was dramatic. Some felt betrayed by the deception, while others were impressed by her professionalism in maintaining cover despite constant harassment. The drill sergeants faced an uncertain future as their behavior came under review by higher authorities. Their careers would depend on how severely their actions were judged and whether the military decided to make their case an example for others. Sarah returned to the barracks one final time to gather her gear and say goodbye to fellow recruits who were still processing the revelation. Tomorrow would bring a return to her real job, but the lessons learned during this assignment would influence military training for years to come. The morning sun cast long shadows across the parade ground at Fort Benning as recruits shuffled into formation. Among the sea of nervous faces stood Sarah Martinez, her slight frame barely visible between two towering male recruits. At 5 feet 4 inches and weighing just 125 pounds, she looked more like a high school student than someone attempting to join one of the military's most demanding programs. Drill Sergeant Thompson's voice boomed across the courtyard like thunder. "Listen up, maggots. Welcome to the toughest training you'll ever experience. Most of you won't make it past the first week." His cold eyes swept across the formation, lingering on Sarah with obvious disdain. "And some of you clearly don't belong here at all." The snickers started immediately. Recruit Johnson, a former college football player standing behind Sarah, whispered loud enough for others to hear. "Did they start accepting children now?" More laughter rippled through the ranks. Drill Sergeant Williams joined his colleague, his massive frame casting a shadow over Sarah. "What's your name, recruit?" "Sarah Martinez, Drill Sergeant." "Well, Martinez, I hope you brought your mommy's phone number because you'll need someone to pick you up when you quit." The drill sergeants exchanged knowing looks. "This isn't summer camp, princess. This is real military training." Sarah's jaw tightened, but she maintained her composure. She had heard it all before. Throughout her life, people had underestimated her based on her appearance. Teachers thought she was too quiet. Coaches believed she was too small. Employers assumed she lacked the strength for demanding jobs. But Sarah had learned long ago that appearances could be deceiving. The first day consisted of physical assessments and paperwork. During push-up tests, Sarah cranked out 50 perfect repetitions while several larger recruits struggled to reach 20. Her sit-ups were flawless, her form textbook perfect. Yet the drill sergeants seemed determined to find fault with everything she did. "Martinez, your push-ups look weak. Drop and give me 20 more." Drill Sergeant Thompson barked. Without hesitation, Sarah dropped to the ground and performed 20 additional push-ups with mechanical precision. Her breathing remained steady, her form unchanged. The other recruits watched in surprise, but the drill sergeants remained unimpressed. During the obstacle course, Sarah's compact size proved advantageous. She slipped through tight spaces that larger recruits struggled with and maintained her speed over longer distances. Her technique was flawless, suggesting extensive training that went far beyond basic fitness. That evening in the barracks, the mockery continued. Recruit Davidson, a former construction worker with arms like tree trunks, held court near his bunk. "I give the little girl 3 days max before she's crying to go home." 2 days, countered Johnson. "She'll probably hurt herself trying to keep up with real soldiers." Sarah quietly organized her gear with military precision. Every item had its exact place, folded and arranged according to regulations that seemed to come naturally to her. She moved with an efficiency that suggested deep familiarity with military life, though she appeared to be just another civilian recruit. The second day brought weapons training. Most recruits fumbled with their rifles, struggling to remember basic safety procedures and firing positions. Sarah handled her weapon with unmistakable expertise. Her grip was perfect, her stance textbook, and her safety protocols automatic. During marksmanship training, the difference became even more apparent. While other recruits missed targets at close range, Sarah's shots clustered tightly around the bullseye at distances that challenged even experienced shooters. Her breathing technique was flawless, and she seemed to instinctively understand wind compensation and other advanced shooting concepts. Drill Sergeant Peterson noticed her accuracy, but attributed it to luck. "Not bad, Martinez, but let's see if you can handle some pressure." He ordered her to perform burpees between shooting sequences, attempting to disrupt her concentration and elevate her heart rate. Sarah completed the exercise and returned to the firing line without apparent fatigue. Her next group of shots was even tighter than before. The drill sergeant frowned, clearly puzzled by her consistent performance under stress. "Probably had some daddy teach her to shoot cans in the backyard," he muttered to his colleague. The harassment intensified over the following days. The drill sergeants assigned Sarah extra duties, hoping to break her spirit. She was given the heaviest packs during marches, the most difficult cleaning assignments, and the longest guard shifts. Through it all, she maintained perfect composure and completed every task without complaint. During a particularly brutal training exercise, recruits were required to carry heavy equipment across rough terrain while under simulated enemy fire. The drill sergeants used blank ammunition and pyrotechnics to create a realistic combat environment. Most recruits panicked, dropping equipment and breaking formation. Sarah moved through the chaos with remarkable calm. She seemed to anticipate where the simulated enemy fire would come from and adjusted her route accordingly. Her tactical movement was sophisticated, using cover and concealment in ways that suggested advanced training. She completed the exercise faster than anyone else while carrying extra equipment abandoned by struggling teammates. Drill Sergeant Williams was beginning to notice patterns that didn't add up. Sarah's performance was too consistent, too professional. Her tactical knowledge seemed to exceed what any civilian should possess. But, rather than investigating further, he chose to increase the pressure. "Martinez thinks she's hot stuff," he announced to the formation. "Let's see how tough she really is." He assigned her to lead a night navigation exercise through difficult terrain, hoping she would fail in front of her peers and, finally, crack under the pressure. The exercise took place in dense woods with minimal visibility. Teams were given coordinates and required to reach checkpoints using only compass and map. Most groups became lost within the first hour, wandering in circles while struggling to read their equipment in the darkness. Sarah's team moved with purpose and precision. She read the terrain like a book, identifying landmarks that were invisible to others. Her compass work was flawless, and she seemed to possess an internal GPS that kept the team on track despite challenging conditions. They reached every checkpoint ahead of schedule and returned to base while other teams were still lost in the woods. The drill sergeants were running out of explanations for Sarah's exceptional performance. Her physical fitness scores were off the charts. Her marksmanship was approaching expert levels. Her tactical knowledge was sophisticated, yet they continued to treat her like a weak link who didn't belong. During hand-to-hand combat training, the instructors paired Sarah with male recruits twice her size, expecting her to be overwhelmed. Instead, she demonstrated techniques that were clearly beyond basic military training. Her moves were precise and efficient, suggesting expertise in advanced martial arts or specialized combat systems. When paired with Johnson, the massive former football player, Sarah used his size and aggression against him. She redirected his attacks with minimal effort and put him on the ground using leverage and technique rather than brute strength. The move was so clean and professional that it silenced the usual laughter from other recruits. "Lucky shot," Drill Sergeant Thompson declared, though his voice lacked conviction. By the end of the first week, Sarah had quietly established herself as the top performer in almost every category. Her test scores were perfect. Her physical fitness was superior. Her weapon handling was expert level. Yet the drill sergeants continued their campaign of harassment, seemingly unable to accept that their initial assessment had been wrong. The other recruits were beginning to notice the disconnect between the treatment Sarah received and her actual performance. Whispered conversations started in the barracks about how she seemed to know things that weren't being taught in their classes. Some began to wonder who she really was and why someone with her obvious skills was going through basic training like a new recruit. Sarah maintained her silence about her background, following regulations that prevented her from discussing her true credentials. She endured the mockery and extra duties without complaint, understanding that revealing her identity would compromise the mission she had been assigned. But the drill sergeant's behavior was beginning to affect unit morale and interfere with training objectives. Late one evening, as Sarah performed yet another punishment detail, she received an encrypted message on a secure communication device hidden in her personal gear. The message was brief but clear. Her cover was becoming problematic and authorization had been granted to reveal her true status if circumstances required it. Sarah deleted the message and returned to her duties. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and fresh opportunities for the drill sergeants to underestimate her capabilities. She wondered how long their denial could continue in the face of mounting evidence that she was far more than she appeared to be. The irony wasn't lost on her. She had spent years proving herself in the most elite military units, earning respect through demonstrated competence in the most demanding environments. Now she found herself back at square one, facing the same prejudices and assumptions that had followed her throughout her career. But Sarah had learned patience along with her other skills. She understood that some lessons could only be taught through experience, and some people needed to learn the hard way that appearances could be very deceiving indeed. The drill sergeants would eventually discover exactly who they had been mocking, but that revelation would come in its own time and in its own way. As she completed her extra duties and prepared for another day of disguised excellence, Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Tomorrow's training would bring new opportunities to demonstrate the gap between perception and reality. The drill sergeants thought they were breaking down a weak recruit, but they were actually testing someone who had already proven herself in ways they couldn't imagine. The stage was set for a confrontation that would challenge everything the drill sergeants thought they knew about military capability and the danger of judging soldiers by their appearance rather than their performance.